Ladies and gentlemen and brethren, thank you very much indeed for joining us for this evening's Solomon Live. My name is Brodie. I'm the Provincial Communications Officer for Worcestershire, and I've been given the huge honour and privilege of hosting these monthly webinars of lively Freemasonry conversation, but most importantly, to ensure they're entertaining for you wherever you are. Now, you can submit your questions to our special guest this evening via the question and answer feature. So just look below, you'll find that in seconds. And our topic this evening is Freemasonry for women. And I'm delighted to say that our special guest this evening is Most Worshipful Brother Christine Chapman, Grand Master of the Honourable Fraternity of Ancient Freemasons, also known as Freemasonry for Women. Christine, how are you doing tonight? You okay?
Hello, good evening, Brodie. I'm doing fine, thank you. I'm sitting here with going to be nervous, but I should be all right, I suppose, once I start talking.
Hey, don't worry about it. It's only me and a few hundred people all over the UK.
What's a few hundred?
Now, Christine, we've got to start at the beginning, and I know you could do an entire presentation on this first question. How would you describe the origins of women's Freemasonry? Because there's a lot to this.
I might say something controversial. I'd say they were legitimate.
Oh.
And they weren't just by listening at doors. It started really in France. The first serious step in our history occurred when Marie de Rem was invited to become a member of a men's lodge called Loge des Libres Penseurs. And from that one step taken resulted in a whole new movement of co-masonry. And that movement was taken to England by Annie Besant, a Victorian reformer and socialist. And from there, that moved, as I said, as an organisation to England. And then a breakaway occurred in 1908 of men and women who wanted to form a new fraternity that was not governed from Paris. And that went on for another 5 years. And then another breakaway occurred when we were formed because we wanted to practice the Royal Arch. And so that's kind of a history repeating itself, but with the women more than the men. And that's how we started, in a nutshell.
Okay, so let's talk about the two women orders that we've got in the UK, because as you just mentioned, there was a breakaway in those early days for very particular reasons, wasn't there?
Yes, in 1908, the co-masons as such were governed from Paris, and there was a group of men and women. You have to remember, it was all men and women in those days. Actually wanted to be more like UGLE, and so they broke away, and their first Grand Master was a man, but they later became more familiarly known to everyone as the Order of Women Freemasons, and they're still going strong today.
Absolutely. So let's talk about you for a second, if we can, Christine. I hope you don't mind, because we've got lots to discuss about women's Freemasonry, but of course it's important that we learn about you as well. So your mom and dad were Freemasons. Why did you become a Freemason? Because I think we all know, just because your mom and dad may be a Freemason, you don't necessarily have to follow in their footsteps. So what was it that made you want to join the fraternity?
My mother, she asked me. In fact, she asked me twice, because I turned her down the first time because I thought it might be a bit boring. So I said, oh, go on then, let me join it. And of course, that was it. That was fatal. I was hooked. From the moment I set foot inside that lodge, I was hooked on it.
And how did they feel about you becoming a Freemason back in the day? Because we often know that the parents are incredibly proud of their sons and their daughters when they join the fraternity. How did they feel about you?
Sadly, my father didn't live to see me join. My husband obviously was very, very proud of me. My mother was proud of me. And I wish they had been around nowadays, but sadly both have died. And so, you know, even my daughter is proud of me. She's not even a Freemason. So.
Well, you've achieved so much in your Masonic career. You've reached the dizzy heights as far as you can go. And Christine, for a lot of people, we know that you're the Grand Master, but remind us of the other orders that you lead.
Well, I'm the Grand Master of the Royal Arch degree and the Mark Master Masons, and by extension, Royal Arch Mariners. But all the other orders have their own, have a different Grand Master. Similar to the men, similar to the way it's done in England.
So how do you find time to squeeze all that in? Because that's a busy
I don't
life you've got.
know. I really don't know how I fitted all this in and still worked. But because since I retired, I've never ever been busier.
They say that, don't they?
I think it's I don't know whose law it is, but the Masonic work seems to expand to fit the time.
Well, a lot of Masons that I know, Christine, you'll certainly go into this category. They say they don't know how they had time to actually have a regular job back in the day.
Yes. I don't know how I ever found time, because I had to commute from the South Coast to London as well.
Well, that's commitment, isn't it? So let's go back to when you joined in 1976, and of course you went into the chair for the first time in 1983. How would you say women's Freemasonry has changed over the years since you've been involved?
Well, since I've been involved, it's become a lot less formal. It's become a lot more friendly. We're more aware of our candidates and what they need and what's important for them, I think. Whereas before, there was a concentration on the people in charge, the higher-ups. And we've tried to reverse that completely and to concentrate more on the new people and the candidates, because they are the future of the fraternity. So we think they're more important.
Now let's go back. Let's delve into the history of Freemasonry, if we can, Christine, because we often hear, don't we, that Freemasonry went underground, if you will. Maybe that's not the term to use, but went underground after the Second World War. Does that apply to women's Freemasonry as well?
Not to quite the same extent. I suppose they didn't really publicise it too much, but they didn't shy away from publicity, and they were still willing to talk about it. There were various articles published about us post-war. Of course, pre-war, they were all for it. Seton Challen, the second Grand Master, made sure that lots of articles about us got published in the press, and they had a whole scrapbook of press cuttings where it was mentioned and who was at the meetings and things like this, which is quite unbelievable when you think about it. But I've never shied away from talking about my membership. I've always been happy to talk about it. In fact, I used to warn people when I went to my husband's ladies' nights, and they would say to me, would you respond on behalf of the ladies? And I'd say, well, you do know I'm going to talk about women's Freemasonry, don't you?
Rightfully so, as well, isn't it? No, rightfully so. And talking about members disclosing their membership, of course, we had Enough is Enough back in 2017. I know you were part of that. And this was to do a number of things, wasn't it? And to get rid of prejudice within Freemasonry.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
Would you say women Freemasons are more comfortable about talking about their membership now compared to men's Freemasonry, or was it the same?
I think it's probably the same. Some professions are very reluctant to publicise their membership because of the adverse reaction that it provokes in the circles around them. So they're not comfortable. They don't like being pictured. If they're on a Zoom and someone wants to take a picture for publicity, they turn their cameras off. But others are really happy to talk about it. So it's pretty much the same as men's Masonry, I should think.
No, well, that's good to hear, isn't it? Now we need to focus on. I know, obviously, you're here to represent women Freemasonry, of course, but we need to talk about the two different Grand Lodges as well. What are the differences between them? So we've got a lot of people joining us tonight from all over the world who perhaps know a little bit about this, and we'll have some people joining us tonight who know nothing about this. So how would you compare the two Grand Lodges?
It's more a question of size than anything. They developed into a much larger organisation than us. So, and we are obviously much smaller, but we like to think because of our small size, we can react very quickly to any suggestions, ideas, propositions that are put to us. We can give you an answer virtually straight away. And we can also respond to candidates' inquiries very, very quickly. And I think that is the main difference between us. Otherwise, I think we're fairly similar in our practices. We just developed along two separate lines. I'm sure the day will come, in case you want to ask me, when we shall reunite. I'm sure it will come one day.
And I don't mean to be controversial, but how is the relationship between the two Grand Lodges?
It's actually quite a cordial relationship because we send each other candidates where necessary, and we do contact each other. So yes, it's quite a cordial relationship. We were sitting in the same box at the Albert Hall, myself and the other Grand Master, when you celebrated your tercentenary. We had a great time.
Oh, that's good to hear. So, is there any inter-Grand Lodge visiting? Is that allowed?
No, we haven't been able to agree on that yet, I'm afraid. We'd like to.
And what would it take for that to happen, Christine?
I think the OWF will have to agree, because we have already said yes, we'd like to do it, but they're not quite sure yet. So we're hopeful that, you know, they will change their minds.
Fingers crossed. Now, I've often heard you say we're in the same game but a different team. So let's explore what you do within Women's Freemasonry. So how similar is it to the work that gets carried out at the United Grand Lodge of England? How would you compare?
I would say it's probably 98% the same. There's only slight differences, I think. Really, but it's very, very similar.
And what are those differences for those who, as long as you're allowed to say, what would those differences be?
I think possibly references where it's applicable is we reference women, but most of the time we use the masculine tense because we are referred to as brother. So yes, and also without giving too much away, we have slightly different method of preparing our candidates.
Well, I'd imagine that was the case before you said that, and hoping that would be the case. And let's talk about the relationship with UGLE right now, because it's quite wonderful, isn't it? David Staples said something quite wonderful when he mentioned that you were joining us here this evening on Solomon Live. How does that make you feel, that relationship that you have with UGLE?
Well, it seems to have gone from strength to strength under David Staples' leadership, and he's definitely been pushing for a much closer alignment between us. And we're very grateful, because we can remember the days when it was, you know, Grand Lodge, United Grand Lodge was really quite horrified to think about women Freemasons and would rather not discuss the topic. Although the programme master of the time, the Marquis of Northampton, did come to our old headquarters and had tea with our Grand Master, Eileen Gray. I don't know if you remember your history, when there was a select committee hearing at the Houses of Parliament about Freemasonry, and I don't know who it was that was called up to give evidence, and our Grand Master, Eileen Gray, went along to support him.
Oh, wonderful. Well, that's really good to hear, isn't it?
Yeah.
And how does it make you feel when you see the change in Freemasonry compared to the way you were talking about the way it used to be and the way it is now? How does that make you feel? So you can see that positive change? I
think it makes me feel extremely positive, both for men's Freemasonry and for female Freemasonry, that the whole emphasis has changed now towards giving value for money, getting people joined for the right reasons, and getting the right sort of people to join, and not just going after numbers.
Yes, yes. So let's get to know Women's Freemasonry a little bit more, and of course you're the Honourable Fraternity of Ancient Freemasons. So do you have provinces and districts? So I'm representing my province, which is Worcestershire. How does it work? How does it work?
It's not quite the same. We do have, after many years as a single organisation in England, we had several lodges in a grouping in the northwest in Lancashire, and we decided to form a province, which is still in existence today. At one stage we had a district for the Isle of Man, because we had 3 lodges on the Isle of Man, but sadly their numbers are diminished down to 1 lodge, so we no longer have a district there. We know that India are very, very hopeful of becoming a district, and possibly America too in the future.
And that brings us on nicely, doesn't it, really, to talk about Freemasonry in different countries, because we know that India is going for a really horrible time at the moment. But yes, Freemasonry for women, it's huge in India, isn't it? Well,
it is now, yes. Freemasonry for the men is very, very popular in India, and they really, really are very supportive of their women. And it was one such lady whose husband was a Freemason approached us and asked us, please, can you form a lodge in India? So she was told to come to England and take her 3 degrees. She had to come over 3 times. And then she came back to us and said, please, can you come out to India? And we said, well, no, can't you bring the women over here? And when that became obvious that they weren't going to be able to organise this, we said, okay, well, let's take HFAF to India. And that's what we did. And in one trip, we initiated, passed and raised 20 women, consecrated the lodge and dedicated a banner.
Wow. Oh, I dread to think how that must have made you.
And we visited the Taj Mahal as well.
Oh, you've got to do that as well, haven't you? You've got to do that. And what do you think, what was the change that happened there to make women's Freemasonry more acceptable and increase in numbers? What do you think that change was, Christine?
I think it was down to the women themselves and to the driving force, Sadhana Rao. She really fought for it, and I think she made a big difference out there. She really got it, you know, well known and noticed. And the men around them were very, very supportive.
Someone who's made a massive difference to the world of Freemasonry and India. And take me through some of the other countries where Freemasonry for women exists.
Well, the first overseas lodge we ever had was in Gibraltar. And then we moved to two in Spain because of expats, obviously. And then, believe it or not, we were approached by a group of Romanian women. And they came over to England, and I was given the task of running what we call our Ambassadors Lodge, which sets up these lodges. And I had to initiate, pass and raise all these women that wanted to come over. And so that formed quite a wonderful relationship between us and them. And we did go out to Romania several times. And I was the first master of this Romanian lodge. Oh,
I dread to think how wonderful that made you feel to be part of that.
It was an amazing feeling, yes. And Maxine, the Grand Secretary, was the second worshipful master.
Now, Christine, a few people would like to know the structure of the organisation, because we know roughly about UGLE, of course, and some know more about it than others. So, how does the structure work as far as your organisation works? Because you said there was a lot of similarities there. Let's go back to that, because we've had a few questions on that.
Well, the first book of constitutions was actually borrowed from the UGLE, because we were told there was no better model, and that's what they based it on. We have very similar officers. Yeah, so the only thing is we did at one stage have program masters. I think they rather misunderstood why the program master was necessary. But after, I don't know, 1970s, I think it must have been, 1980s, we went over to just the Grand Masters, and we had a deputy Grand Master and an assistant Grand Master. And we are the Grand Master is elected every 4 years.
And you told me some wonderful news a little bit earlier on, and we were speaking before we launched to the world on Solomon Live. You've somewhat been extended.
Yes, I should have come out of office in 2022, but because of COVID, it was decided that my second term of office would be extended by 2 years to 2024, and then I shall retire.
And
my garden.
How do you think you would react to that, Christine? Because this has been part of your life for so long, and
I expect it will still be a big part of my life, but I will be able to step back from all the decision making and carrying all the responsibility for it. It won't be quite so burdensome in that respect, although it's been a privilege, obviously, to do this job. And it's lovely to see some of the results of our hard work coming into fruition now.
No, absolutely. You've really made a difference. So let's talk about the pandemic, because I did speak to Dr. David Staples about this last week, about UGLE as a whole. So let's talk about women's Freemasonry. How has the pandemic affected you, good or bad?
Well, we haven't, fortunately, lost anybody due to COVID. We obviously had a few people die because of other illnesses, and I'm sure that there will be people with cancer and things that didn't get treated that we will lose over time. But what I have noticed is certain women are really quite reluctant to come into the world again, and it's going to be a job to persuade them, I think, to come back to lodge. So yeah, that's going to be a big task for us, to instill confidence in them to return to actual physical meetings. They have had such a wonderful time on Zoom.
As much as it's lovely to be on Zoom, We can't wait for a time when we can actually see each other again. I mean, that's going to be a magical moment, isn't it?
It is indeed. Yes, I can't wait. Yeah.
Okay, now a few people are getting in touch with us now. So as you can imagine, brethren, ladies and gentlemen, if you have got any questions, you need to get them in pretty quickly. And the way to do that is via the question and answer facility, which you'll see at the bottom of your screen. So let's talk about progressive orders. Let's get back to talking about some of the differences. What progressive orders are available to Freemasons?
Well, obviously, having had this big argument and split, the first one was the Royal Arch. That was the first one that was introduced. Then we followed it with the cryptic degrees, which sadly fell into disuse. Then I think it was the Rose Croix, Mark Masonry, and then there was another hiatus before they introduced Arc Mariners. And then finally it was KT and KTP. I have been asked to do OSM, which we should have done last year. And now I've been asked if we'll do Athelstan. So that looks like a possibility as well. We can't do as many as the OWF because they've spent, many years setting these other orders up. And, we are a small fraternity and it's quite hard. You tend to involve the same people all the time. And there is a limit. And there are so many days in a week that you can give to it. So many hours in the day.
And how does it work to set up these progressive orders, Christine? Because do you work with the male counterparts, or is it done kind of separately?
I think it's in the older days. It was done covertly, I think, with the men, because obviously it would have been frowned upon. I think they supplied a lot of the information about how things should be done. And nowadays it's done as a cooperation. People offer to help us. Even the Grand Master of the OWF offered to help us at one stage. So yes, I hope to take her up on that offer when things get back to normal.
Oh, something to look forward to, isn't it? Now, back to some of the questions we're receiving. With the participation of many women's Freemasons in online talks during the pandemic, has the understanding of women Freemasons increased to a wider audience? Now, Christine, I know you're no stranger to doing things like this, which is absolutely wonderful. You're always willing to spread the word and to celebrate the work that you do. Have you noticed an increase as it created more attention?
Yes, I've had so many requests from different provinces, different light blue clubs and things to give talks. It's been amazing. Yes, but at the same time, it's been a boon for our members because they're now going to all these educative Zooms and lectures, which were never open to them before. So it's been a two-way street, really. They have enjoyed it.
So do you think you've got many people waiting to come in like you, Jelly?
Yes, we have. We have got a couple of hundred, I think, waiting to come in. Obviously, I presume it's because people have heard so much about it now and they've had time to look it up. And what we do, we have a Pale Blue Club online, and they have a special sessions every 2 months for our candidates. Oh. And we have a candidates one, and they all get together and are able to talk to us. And that's what I think it makes them still feel a part of us. And we encourage our lodges to Zoom with their candidates constantly, and to invite them to their lodge socials online, their online lodge socials.
And where do most of your members come from, Christine, if you don't mind me asking? Because, for example, I'm a Freemason and proud. I came from the world of online. Nobody in my family a Freemason for me to attach myself to. So how do you get most of your members joining?
It's the same as you. I mean, a lot of it was family, and it still is family in many cases, or it's friends. But others, it's online. There's an awful lot of online applications now. People read about it and they they've just something they want to do, and then they find us online, and I think their interest is piqued and they want to find out more.
And do you think, and this is not just, this is aimed at Freemasonry as a whole, not just your organisation, the OWF. Do you think there needs to be more work done to spread the word that there are women Freemasons in the country, or indeed all over the world as well? Because it does tend to surprise a lot of people, doesn't it, when you tell them. I've lost count how many interviews that I've seen over many years, and that's one of the things that comes up, isn't it? It's pretty much one-sided. It's all for the men. Well, it really isn't. Do you think that message needs to get out a little bit more?
Well, it's not getting out to certain Twitter users, that's for sure. But they're not really interested in the facts, are they? They just like a good insult or a good argument. They definitely don't let the truth get in the way, do they? I think it could possibly be helped by even more promotion, but I don't want to over promote it. We don't want people to think we're absolutely desperate.
Well, that's the key, isn't it? Yeah, that's the key, isn't it? To get the right members, and that's
yes.
That's the same with you, Julie, as well. And let's talk about how many members that you've got, because I'm referring to some of the questions that we're getting in this evening as well. How many members do you have?
Well, as I said, we are small. We don't make any bones about it. We're about 700. So, we are hoping to increase in size. We were increasing in size prior to the pandemic. So it's really quite galling that it all had to come to a halt. But things are what they are and what they were at the time.
And what about the lodges that you've got across the country, and indeed in different parts of the world as well? How many are there? Well, how many of those are there altogether?
Well, I think there's probably about 38 now, 38 craft lodges plus chapter and mark and lodges of research and so on, and the other orders like the KTP, KT, Rose Croix are all extras, yeah.
And let's talk about men's Freemasonry and women's Freemasonry coming together now. Would you like to see special evenings when we can all get together? I mean, can that happen? Does it happen?
We can get together usually at a white table event. The men can call off and we can come in. One of us will go in and deliver a talk. Sometimes they invite the women to go along. Sometimes they ask us to wear our regalia, and we do. But there's no way you can have an actual lodge meeting other than a celebration of a special occasion. You can't possibly have a degree meeting because you're changing the nature of the meeting from single sex to co-masonry, and that is not what the members want at this stage.
And there's a lot of talk, isn't there, and not necessarily by Masons, but there's a lot of talk, isn't there, about merging together, coming as one. But there's a lot to be said for male bonding and women bonding, isn't there? I mean, is there anything wrong with that? No,
I don't think there is. I mean, some women have said to us when they've joined us that they're really looking for an all-female environment because they work in an environment at work where there's lots of men, and they quite enjoy being just women. This is, our organisation is for women, run by women. It's a woman-only space.
And of course, we need to draw attention to this question again, by the way, because a lot more people have joined us. And this is the question you get asked perhaps more than any other. Brothers versus sisters. Let's see. I dread to think how many times you've been asked that. Let's go back to that, Chestnut, because it is one that you do get asked a lot, isn't it?
When back in the old days, and I do really mean the old days, they were called sister. That's pre-HFAF times. But then they took the decision that they wanted to be brothers. And we say quite categorically, we believe that we are members of a universal brotherhood, the Brotherhood of Freemasonry. So therefore, we're quite happy and we're quite easy about using the term brother. In fact, for all these years, I've been a brother, and I would find it very, very strange to refer to myself as a sister.
And sometimes we talk in life, don't we, about problems that are not really there, don't we? So yes. Is that an issue within the organisations? People wish it could be a sister as opposed to brother. Is that
no, I've never had any requests for people, for us to be called sisters. People have asked me, younger ones sometimes, about why can't we be co-masons? Why can't we have mixed sex? And I explained to them this isn't what the membership want yet. Obviously, there may come a time, but it has to come from both both sides of the divide. The men have to want it, the women have to want it, and it's not something you can impose on people. You can't impose it from the top. It has to come from the bottom upwards, a demand for it.
And what would you like to see what would you like to see in the next 5 to 10 years for women's Freemasonry, Christine? If you had a magic ball and a magic wand to go with it, what would you like to see happen to women's Freemasonry?
I think I'd like to see it grow more, go into more lodges, and to become a much stronger organisation, and for everyone to feel the benefit of their membership and to feel empowered by it, and to feel, you know, that there's no difference between them other than the obvious one of gender, and that what they do is equally as valid as what men do.
And let's talk about, now you're here tonight, we're here tonight, aren't we, to talk about women's Freemasonry. And that's all we wanted to focus on. But we do need to talk about co-masons as well, don't we? Because that obviously involves women Freemasonry. Tell me a little bit more about that. We've had a few questions on co-masons, if you're happy to talk about that.
Well, as I said, the co-masons, the whole thing started in France, and then it came to this country in 1902. And that organisation is still in existence and still going strong. And it's actually a worldwide movement. So yes, and we have good relations with the co-masons, and we talk to them. We're quite good friends with some of them, and they come along to. We had once a Robert Lomas talk at UGLE as for one of our celebrations, and they came along to it, and they enjoyed it very much indeed. So yes, co-masonry still exists, and it's still going strong, and it's a choice. It's a Masonic lifestyle choice. When you join, do you want to be single sex or do you want to be mixed sex? And that's what people can choose. It's there for people to choose from. It's not forced upon them. They have the choice.
And so let's talk about the next stage, bringing in new members and attracting new members, because that's something that you're really passionate about, Christine. I know this. Let's talk about university schemes within Freemasonry.
Well, when I first heard about the university scheme, which was quite some years ago now, I sort of researched it, and I presented it to our board as a viable proposition, and we decided to run with it. And we took out, I think our first lodge was in 2014. And obviously we didn't expect instantaneous results. We knew that it had taken many years for the UGLE scheme to become established. And so we weren't looking for a magic transformation overnight. So it's been slow and steady, and we've got a few lodges that have been consecrated specifically for the university scheme, and others that have joined it while still having ordinary, non-university scheme members. So, and we've got a couple in the pipeline at the moment. So yes, it's slowly but surely coming stronger.
Good to hear. And do you have any new and young members clubs within the fraternity? So, for example, I'm the chairman of the Young Members Club in Worcestershire. Does the same apply to your organisation?
Well, we have an online club at the moment. It was called the Pale Blue Club. So it covers all membership. Everyone who's not a Grand Lodge officer can attend these meetings. And obviously, when we get back to actual physical meetings, I'm sure that we will set up some physical clubs. But because our members tend to be widespread, they don't always live in the same geographical area, which makes life difficult to hold a physical meeting at times. So probably they will have Zoom meetings and physical meetings. But yes, it has been very well received, the Pale Blue Club. And they're working very hard.
They're a refreshing element to the world of Freemasonry, aren't they?
Yes.
A few more questions then that we've had in, and some of these are quite wonderful actually. So, do you have Lewis's? And I think perhaps we need to explain what a Lewis is for somebody who's perhaps not a Freemason, or are they called something else?
Well, until we reduced our joining age to 18, we had Lewis's. My deputy Grand Master was a Lewis, and yes, that was the daughter of Freemasons, and they were able to join at 18. But now everyone can join us at 18, because we felt that we had to lower the age as the age of majority was lowered in this country, so to be in line. And so that's why we don't really have a Lewis. You could be a Lewis if you're a daughter of a Freemason, but without getting any special privileges.
And this is an interesting one again. The OWF and yourselves, do you use the same ritual book?
Well, we use Universal Ritual, so I think the OWF use that as well, if I'm not mistaken.
And explain how your festive boards work. Now, I appreciate that you said earlier on that you're very similar to the way Men's Freemasonry works, UGLE, but how do your festive boards work? Do you have Masonic fires, for example?
We do, but it's only at installation meetings or consecrations, very formal ones. And we have the fire, which relates to the actual Grand Masters, because our Grand Masters tend to visit, be present at a lot of these festive balls, whereas obviously in UGLE it would be a very special occasion indeed if the Grand Master was to be present. So the fire is in honour of the 3 Grand Masters. But apart from installations and consecrations, we have informal festive boards most of the time, because most of our membership have come of some distance to come to attend to a meeting. So we have to bear in mind that they need to get away and get back on the road or get to the station. And also it's a cost.
Absolutely. And when you've got members scattered all over the country, as you were talking about earlier on, how do you practice your ritual? How do Lodge of Instructions work?
Well, we used to have physical lodges of instructions, obviously, and they would have them. Some lodges would only get one prior to a meeting, a week before a meeting. Others in the north were able to have their 2 or 3 before a meeting. We weren't able to have what some men are used to, and that is weekly lodges of instruction, mainly because we didn't have the time. Our calendar didn't permit this. But in the summer months, we always held a summer school, as it were, of course, summer lodges of instruction, and people would travel to these, and these would be held for about 8 or 9 weeks. And once a week, they would have, all day instruction, and people could attend 2 sessions a day if they wanted to, and they could practice their next offices. Some lodges held extra levies before the main levi, and people could practice. So that's how I dipped my toe into the world of ritual when I was a Master Mason, and I was given a piece to learn, and it was the extended working tools, and I didn't think that I should argue with the preceptor, so I went away and learned it. Didn't dare argue, so I've got to possibly learn that.
No, absolutely. And let's talk about your future, because we spoke earlier on that I think your members will be delighted to hear this, won't they? That you're not going anywhere until 2024. When you look back at Freemasonry as a whole and women's Freemasonry, what have been some of the the best moments in the development of Freemasonry over the years for you?
Well, personally, one of the best moments was my very first installation into the chair. I was in cloud 9 for weeks afterwards. I was floating on air. I thought I was so special. It was just a wonderful feeling. I can't describe it. And I suppose the various other chairs that I went into, and my first senior Grand Lodge office as Assistant Grand Master, and then the ultimate honour of becoming Grand Master in 2014. And that was a wonderful occasion for me. And again in 2018. Attending your tercentenary was quite an amazing occasion as well. I really enjoyed that. That was really special.
And we need to talk about your own celebration, don't we? Going back to, was it 2013? Celebrating
2013 was our centenary, and we celebrated that at Great Queen Street. We held an open meeting, and our family came along and friends, and we did a banner dedication and a rededication, and I was asked to give an oration on the banner, and I didn't have a clue, so I asked Keith Gilbert of Hertfordshire, what did this involve? He gave me some examples, so I wrote something. I said, will that do? He said, oh, that's wonderful, yes. So I had to stand up and deliver that.
Were you happy with the performance?
Yeah, I mean, I've never been afraid of standing up and delivering in public. I think because I was forced as a child, believe it or not, to take elocution lessons. You'd never know from my accent now, but I had to stand up and recite poetry at the Poetry Society in Earl's Court. And I used to quiver like a jelly, but it stood me in very good stead for conquering my nerves in the end.
And that's the power, isn't it? That's one of the wonderful things about Freemasonry. Time is sadly drawing to a close. Can you believe we've been talking for nearly 45 minutes? It's gone just like that. I can't believe how quickly that's gone. Here's a lovely question, actually. This is not to pick out any questions in particular, but I think this is lovely. What has Freemasonry brought to your life since 1976?
It's brought me an incredible array of friendships. Something I wouldn't have thought possible, and those friendships have lasted for decades. And it's brought me into contact with a whole range of people that I never ever thought I would meet. People who in the normal course events I would never meet, in age, in background. All the people at UGLE I've met, I would never have expected to meet. And all the people over the world who I've met and have been privileged to travel to talk about Freemasonry. You know, I was invited to Singapore, to Canada. It's quite incredible. Although, of course, now I shall be only invited again on Zoom, I think. They've never paid for me to go out again. But yes, I have had an amazing time talking about women's Freemasonry. And
you are an absolute amazing ambassador. You really are for not just for women's Freemasonry, for Freemasonry, which I know you're very, very passionate about. So when you look back at your time as a Grandmaster, how would you like to be remembered? I mean, you're not disappearing anywhere yet. We know that already. There's a couple more years and then some, isn't there? But how would you like to be remembered for your legacy, if you will?
I hope I'll be remembered for getting things done and for opening up the world of women's Freemasonry to the big wide world.
Absolutely. Well, our time here is done. Christine Chapman, have you enjoyed yourself tonight?
Yes, I really hadn't realised our time was up. You've been a very, very good interviewer.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Well, Christine, I can't thank you enough for joining us. Most worshipful brother, Christine Chapman, thank you for being an absolute star this evening. And brethren, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us here tonight. We will be back with you very soon. And next Solomon Live will be in the very capable hands of Gareth Jones, most excellent third Grand Principal. And the topic will be the mystery of the Royal Arch. So please make sure you sign up to that as a matter of urgency. Emails and details and booking links will be sent out to you later on this week. And also before we disappear, if you haven't done so already, please make sure you register for Solomon. You'll find us in no time at all, solomon.ugle.org.uk. Full papers on there, videos, lots of great stuff for your daily advancement in Masonic knowledge. Until then, brethren, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. And until our next Solomon Live, have a very good evening. Good night.
Good night, everyone.